Hi, welcome to part 2 of the Twitchcast. Today we're going to focus on Brad Constantine. We're going to see a lot of beautiful weapons, some armor, and even a backpack. As usual, you're going to see my comments up above written in text, so I don't slow down the video. Let's get started.
How do you follow bacon?
I
There's no
don't
way
know.
to do that. It's all downhill from here.
Well, come on in.
Do I get a red one?
Yeah, you can.
The goal is
There's
red
a great
tongue by
one
the
over
end
here.
of this thing.
It's gonna be hard to talk if you have that stuff.
No.
Yeah, no?
No, always.
difficult.
He's like, no. Yeah.
But it tastes so good.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks
It's
for
so
having us.
great to actually be able to stop working and come down
Brad,
and talk about
Brad
what
has
we're
wanted
doing.
to be on a
Well,
live
is your
stream
chain
forever.
still attached?
My chain, yes, it's so heavy.
It's still.
First, introduce yourself for people who might not know who you are.
My name is Brad Constantine, and I'm a senior artist here at Intrepid on the character team. Senior meaning I'm really old.
No, stop.
You have a lot
So-
of experience as an animator.
I do. This is
Yeah.
my 8th MMO.
I know.
Right, so I've been around
You've
the block
been
a couple
through
of
the
times.
ropes
I have.
on some of the previous projects.
Right, and I gotta say that this project, out of all of those MMOs that I've worked on, this has got to be the coolest one that I've worked on.
That's pretty
Well,
awesome.
You know, at the beginning of this, Steven came to us and we're setting up the character team, and we're saying, okay, Steven, what do you want? And he says, I want everything.
That sounds about right.
Well, that's just my negotiating starting point.
No pressure.
Right? Yeah, you got to start at the top so that you end up where you want, right?
Exactly. So we're trying to do that. We're trying to give you everything that you want. Steven's vision is so clear and so precise that it's very easy to go down that road.
Well, we have a clear vision, and part of the character team and the team in general is that we all share this vision for the project, right? We have a passion for it. A lot of people have done MMOs in the past, so they've been through the type of challenges that we're going to be facing on this project and have faced on this project so far. So it's great to have that experience to kind of address those issues and come out the other end with some success.
Well, I can understand from your perspective too. I've worked on a lot of teams where you have a creative director who maybe isn't very good at creative directing, and you're in a situation where you're like, what is the vision? And I don't understand it. Whereas here we really do understand it, because we all want it to as players. So I think that's the exciting part about it.
Well, I find the players find that too, that in the industry in general, the MMO genre, there is a real lack of vision. Everything sort of became repetitive and, stale,
Yep.
and how do you
Move it up.
Revamp it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, talk to us a little bit about what the character team has been working on recently, or
So-
just in general, I guess.
So the character team involves a whole lot of different disciplines, right? So we're talking everything from creating characters to doing the meshes, we're doing the rigging, the skinning, the animation, all of that. That's all encompassed under the character artist umbrella. So there's a lot going on all fronts, just like Bacon said. Everything from fixing up the combat to modeling and designing new mounts and weapons and things, figuring out stuff under the hood, all of the technical things, how we're going to go down the road of character customization and all of that great stuff.
Yeah. And go
I'm
ahead. Sorry.
excited.
No, everything happening at one time.
Yeah, and part of a big component for the character team, not just from concept to model to rig to animation to effects to whatever, is that an MMO is a very large world. It has a lot of different pieces, and it has a lot of population that needs to be present in order to make it engaging and diverse and something you want to explore. So, part of one of the big tasks that the character team has is kind of categorizing creatures and NPCs and races into compartmentalized groups that can share as much as possible without looking the same across the board. We want it to look visually diverse, but share a lot of the core work that goes into creating these different lines of creatures and or players, right? And that's a difficult task. But the great thing about having experience on MMOs in the past is this isn't your first rodeo, and this is how things are traditionally done in order to create successfully an MMORPG.
And I think to give an example of what Steven's saying, for example, on the simplest side of that would be like, you have a horse, right? You can make a zebra from a horse, you know, that kind of thing. So being able to create lots of different types of creatures based on like a base model of a creature and share some of those animations so that we can move forward much faster and quicker.
That's true. With a world as large as ours is going to be, and with as many creatures and different characters that you're going to run into and deal with, we have to find ways of making it all work, making it all run. We can't just do anything that we want to do. Right, so there's a huge technical.
Well, we can. Just how long it's going to take us.
Right. So on our end, on the character end, there's a lot of fakery going on a professional level. So meaning that everything that you see on the screen in the course of the game is a combination of a lot of different technical things all going on at once. For example, so once the character gets a certain distance away from you, we're going to start swapping out that character with smaller versions, you know, levels of detail and that sort of thing. All sorts of technical stuff that's going on under the hood. Mm-hmm. We're doing all kinds of work on iterating on the new combat with the new root motion stuff going forward, which is great as an animator because it frees us up to be able to do all kinds of cool dynamic things that you see in like single player games and that sort of thing.
And a lot of so much of what you guys are working on with regards to that combat is basically establishing the root animations that are present on a character model, right? I mean, these are diverse animations that are going to be present for the characters in the MMORPG, and it's going to have a wide range of applicability, movement directions, you know, all that stuff that's present for players to kind of utilize.
It's got to be fun. It's got to be cool, right? It's got to be replayable, right? It's something that you want to do every day. Yeah. And that's also its own challenge too, is finding a movement style and a motion style that works for that long-term replayability. I've worked on a lot of MMOs, and you know, when you're spending hours and hours and hours inside a game or whatever, it's very important that the visual presentation that you get is not jarring, disturbing, you know, doesn't make you tired and all that kind of thing. Yeah. All sorts of little things that you wouldn't normally think of with other types of games become a real challenge in MMO.
We have some videos, I think,
that's
right?
just going to transition.
Woohoo, we could show stuff?
Yeah.
We never get to show
First thing we're
stuff.
going to show is the Dawnbreaker, and I think Steven actually leaked a little leak of this.
Yeah, I think this is like last week or the week before. A little leak of the Dawnbreaker. That's something that one of our character artists, Jinsey, was working on.
Shout out to Jinsey.
Shout
Good
out
job.
to Jinsey.
Yay, she's awesome.
So the Dawnbreaker, as you guys know, is a Braver of Worlds mount. So you're starting to see the pipeline now incorporating some creation of the Kickstarter assets. These are, again, work in progress. These are first passes, but you can kind of see it's, you know,
butterfly wings.
It's
awesome.
the wings might be moving a little fast there.
Butterflies' wings move pretty fast.
They do.
But that's the whole point of iteration, is you create something, you get it into the game, you look at it, you move it around, you play with it, and then you make a lot of notes, and then you go back and you iterate and make it better and better and better.
Yep. He's kind of scary, but in like an awesome way. Like, I love the concept art of him where he's like, he's on top of a building holding onto it. I'm like, he looks so sweet.
And this is absolutely first pass too.
Yes.
Very important that you guys realize that the animation for an MMO is a very iterative process.
Even the materials, I think, are still being
The materials need to be
and stuff
adjusted
like
a little
that,
bit, yes. And there's still effects that get added to the wing. There's some bioluminescence that we're going to put. Very subtle, but it will be on the wings, and maybe some particle effects. Dust.
Kind of like, you know when you see a moth and they have like that little dust.
I love that stuff. That kind of detail.
And I know Jim's been like trying to figure out how he wants to do that. And you guys have been trying to like work together on like what you need to do as an animator in order to make that something that a effects person can attach to it. Right?
Agree. We all work together. You know, we all sit down with design. We sit down with the effects people, and that's the benefit of having such a small, talented team, is that we can sit down and sort of bang our heads together, and from our collective experience, come up with something awesome.
Yeah, so we've got some more videos for you all. We have some weapon variants that we're going to show. So you might have seen some of these on think the video that we had with
These
Carson,
are awesome.
which I think are just gorgeous. But now these are like closer up shots so that you can actually see each of them and the differences between them and the different modeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of a lot of variety that we want to have present in the weapons and armors that are available to players, so that they have a distinct and unique look. I know, in a lot of MMOs that I've played, there's kind of a status quo of weaponry that you're expected to have at each level, and there's the best in slot, and the best in slot always looks the same, so you know what a person has. Here we can have some variance so that you get the general idea of what another player will have, at least from a threat assessment standpoint or understanding the character's build out. But at the same time, there are some unique aspects that we can play with to give that character more customization opportunity with their weapon. So you're seeing that present in APOC first, but in the MMORPG, the idea stays the same. There is a diversity that players will have the opportunity, as we spoke about in our last developer diary with Carson, players will have the opportunity to distinguish their particular build and yet still have the same quote unquote item per se. So giving that kind of cosmetic, dials to the players to uniquely define their appearance is something that we really think is important to an RPG aspect of the MMO.
Yeah, and he's been having so much fun making these. I know that every time I walk up there, he's always just like, this is my dream. I'm living my dream right now.
Yeah.
I know I am. I jump out of bed every day to come do this.
And the important thing, the other important thing about this type of diversity and customization that's available to players is that not everybody likes the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is true in life, it is true in games. So at the end of the day, having this range of customization really allows the players to define their own their own desires, right? And it may not appeal to everybody, but that's why we want to have a wide variety so that players can have the opportunity to find what's right for them.
These are just amazing looking. Shout out to Carson for these. These are just fantastic.
Yes, well done,
Yeah.
Carson.
Wow.
They look great.
I want to play this game right now.
When you're looking at creating weaponry like this, and I guess this can be to Steven too, and you're trying to make that diversity, what is it that you think is going to make people excited to see that?
Well, when for these weapon sets in particular, these were originally concepted by Jeff Deliere, and when I was sitting with Jeff and he's giving me, different silhouettes of the weapon types, and you can kind of see the components that arc out from the core piece of that weapon, defining, I think, a variety there is really about finding what are opposites of each other, right? You want to kind of represent unique aspects of a weapon across the board and make sure that they differ from each other and not just have the slight variance. So that's why you see some of these crossbows, they have kind of like feathery aspects to them, and the other ones don't. They have more of a jagged edge on the hilt of the weapon. I think that's an important part, defining in concept first, and that way that Carson can work from a clear and defined kind of representation of what direction these different weapon types will have.
And I think something to note too is that this is only just one style, right? There's going to be a variety of different types.
Oh,
of
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We've gotten a lot of people who are asking for like a different types of like medieval or Asian style.
So it's important to note that, as you guys are seeing a lot of these assets, right? And all of these weapons you're seeing, these are in-game assets, right? These are completed models.
Yep.
They are right now being used in Apocalypse and our internal testing and being insured there. So the important thing about this process is that, there is a crap ton of art. There is a crap ton of assets that need to be created to make an MMO feel diverse and fulfilling for the players to experience. And all of those assets require first having set up a pipeline from the artist perspective so that they can make sure that not each asset is going to take as long as the next one, that they can kind of cut down that time and share as much as possible, get the process down and understood, and they can move through the master asset list that needs to be created for the initial launch of the MMORPG and get it done in a timely manner so that the product comes out. And as each of these sets are being being completed by Carson and the character team, that is becoming more defined, more finite, more kind of optimized in a sense, so that the later down the road, as we get into the big master asset list, that time is not as ballooned as the initial assets.
Yeah, and they've been doing a lot of optimization lately. I know that they've done many passes on these in order to make sure that even performance is going to be really smooth for all of us.
Absolutely.
And I think we had a question in chat requesting what kind of tools you use to create animation specifically.
Okay, we use two different 3D programs to do our animation. Our primary program is a program called Motion Builder by Autodesk. They also create Maya. So Motion Builder is a program that was developed primarily to modify and work motion capture data, but we find that it has an excellent suite of keyframe animation tools, so we use that as our primary character animation thing. Yeah, it's a fantastic program.
Yeah, and I, even when Carson was on his video, he was talking about how he just loves all the tools that he gets to use. It's almost for him like he actually gets to, model almost like as if he's doing like it in real life, which is really cool.
It's great. And in using Unreal Engine 4 too, there's a lot of direct integration with some of these tools too. So for example, I can work on something in Maya, I can take it right into Motion Builder without having to close out of Maya and then reopen the other program. Then I can take something from Motion Builder right into UE4, I can test it, then go back into the animation program, iterate on it, test it again, repeat.
Yeah. And you've heard me in the past, I've always been a big proponent of the engine, Unreal Engine, because, as Brad just described, there's a lot of integration with third-party software that is necessary for the construction of these types of large games. I mean, if we had to create tools ourselves, this would be a much longer process, but there are a lot, we do have to create a lot of tools ourselves, but there are also out-of-the-box tools that help to kind of move the production forward, at least from an animation standpoint, an environment team standpoint. These types of things are present in the engine by default. Yes, they can have some, catering and unique aspects that we can then apply to them, but that's another great aspect of Unreal Engine is that it's highly customizable.
It really is, and it's great. And just about anything that you would need to learn in Unreal Engine, you can find on sites like YouTube and other things. So it's a fantastic tool, and we're digging deep into it to find out all of the things that we can do with it, and it's been really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think people are really liking the changes and upgrades to the different weaponry pieces.
What I would say is, from my experience as an MMORPG player in previous MMORPGs, I've always been underwhelmed by the diversity of weapons that are available in those games and or armors. And I think originally the idea behind the creation of this game is that to the character team, their kind of mission statement was, hey, we want to be as diverse and as many items as possible so that players can create their own unique representation of themselves from an RPG standpoint. And that's kind of what you're seeing here. This is a small taste of the type of weapon diversity that will be present in Ashes of Creation. And the animations themselves will also have some unique aspects to them.
And particle effects probably too.
Absolutely. The idea here is to make a world that is so diverse you literally get lost in it.
And with that in mind,
I'm going to need a very large crate to put all of my things
right.
in.
It's very easy to forget that with all of the talented and experienced people that we have here at Intrepid, that this is still Steven's first trip down the rodeo.
Oh yeah,
to the rodeo. So we are guiding him through this process of setting up pipelines and iteration and all of this sort of thing.
The stuff I've learned in the past 3 years, I feel like it has taken more brain space than I've learned in my previous 30 years.
Well, it's one thing to make a game, right? To make an MMO and already have a studio and already have a staff and have other teams available. Say, okay, we're going to get
projects to pull from.
Right, we're going to pull guys on for this or whatever.
Yes.
whereas here we're making everything from the ground up.
Yep.
I do want to ask a question, but this is more to you, Stephen,
Sure.
because I think before you had said to people that you're not looking for the giant sword that's bigger than the person
Right.
that they can't carry.
Oversized,
Like you're
yeah.
looking for that more realism. Can you talk a little bit more about that specifically? Because people had follow-up questions on that. Because
Yeah, no,
they
absolutely.
do kind of like the fantasticalness. That's why people play games.
Fantasticalness is fine, and we will have a lot of high fantasy aspects to the game. However, from a physics standpoint, something that, and this is just a personal taste standpoint, right? People have different opinions on this. This is highly subjective.
As a small person, I don't mind carrying.
Right,
like,
exactly. And I played plenty of games that were very fun, and they were visually stunning, and they had oversized weapons and stuff. But from my perspective, when you're playing a game and you're immersed in something, there is something called that suspension of disbelief, right?
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, your immersion factor is only as high as you can believe that you're in the game.
I gotcha.
And some components of other types of art styles don't help to suspend that disbelief. They actually make it more difficult. And I feel that one of the aspects of prop design or weapon design is that kind of oversized features I think don't make sense to me. So it makes it more difficult for me to kind of suspend that disbelief.
And where you'd like to see it, and I think this is a great transition, is more in that diversity of changing items and things like that. So the next thing that we have is the backpack. We know we showed a little taste of that on Carson's
I want a backpack.
video.
I want that in real life.
But this kind of gives you a little bit more of so you can look at all the little tiny details.
Yeah.
And this kind of goes into what you were talking about a little bit, where you want that realism of being able to, if I am an alchemist person, maybe I carry more potions with me rather than
Right.
other
I mean,
things, right?
a big component of the MMORPG, that half of that acronym is RPG, role-playing game.
Yeah.
And in order to role play, you need to be able to represent kind of what your character is doing in that world. And part of what animation is doing is creating these sockets on the, let's say, the belt or the back that can plug in certain types of props or items that are created by the character team, like Carson. Might be a scroll tube, it might be a potion, it might be whatever. Those players will have the ability, as we've discussed in the past, will have the ability to select what they want to be represented in those sockets, and then animation will make sure that they jive well in movement.
All
and
these
as
are
the
gonna,
character's
like the
moving.
little bottles jingling and stuff like that. Is that kind of stuff that you find really fun to animate?
Yeah, we love that kind of stuff. And
The flag,
it goes
flag.
along the same lines of Stephen wanting everything.
The look
So
at the
basically,
is great.
the idea that any character can wear just about any sort of outfit and carry any weapon at any time and that sort of thing, what a wonderful thing.
And I think
Right?
Yeah.
And I think players really want that.
Absolutely.
I think the kind of game that we're making that is so hard to make
Yes.
and so challenging, and everything takes so much planning and so much time,
Yep.
it's what players really
Absolutely.
want.
what I
It's,
And part
it's,
of-
it's hard to express to people how long things really
Yes.
take to
Yes.
do,
Yes.
especially when you have to create an entire world from scratch.
scratch, yeah.
I mean, just looking at that backpack and
And
all
seeing
of
all
the
those little
things on it,
pieces, yeah.
imagine having to start designing all of those things from scratch just to design a backpack.
And that's just one backpack.
It's just one backpack.
And that's an engineering backpack, right? So we'll have a variety of different backpacks for the engineer.
So the other component that you think about when as Brad was saying, wanting everything, is you guys know this because you've been following for the past 2 years
those of
now.
you
We
who
just
have
this
been here
month,
with
right?
us
For
for a
those
while.
of you who've been with us,
Yeah.
this month actually was our 2-year anniversary from Kickstarter, May 1st. So the cool thing though is that a lot of what we talked about in the beginning is companies are unwilling, I think, sometimes to take the risk that comes along with creating such a vast and substantial game like Ashes of Creation. This is a very ambitious project. And we part of hiring the team members we have here is making sure they understand, hey, this is a very ambitious project, and this is going to be something that passion will fuel you to see complete. Right, that is an important part, and why it's been a major point for me. I keep looking at that stupid microphone. Is why it's been a major point for me when bringing on board people is that I see in their eyes the passion to complete and do a project
It
of
looks
this
in your eyes.
size. Right, that's such an important aspect for me, and I know along with that we have the seniors and the talent that's present and the experience that's here. But there's a lot of stuff to get done, and it's great to have a team like Brad and the other character team and everybody else on the team that's capable of actually achieving these things and don't balk at the idea of doing a backpack like this or doing this.
Big lists don't scare me, man.
Right, exactly.
And I think the next thing that we have is an armor piece to show you all. So
Oh, cool.
Let's go.
Oh,
ahead
do
and
we have
look at
armor
that.
pieces?
Yeah. So this is one that Keith is working on, I believe.
So the important thing to know about this piece, and a lot of what you guys saw in APOC was very asymmetrical in its design, creating the asset, the armor sets themselves. But there is a wide diversity of cultures in Ashes of Creation. So there are 9 distinct cultures, and that's the major races. That doesn't even account for, the minor races that are present and will have some influences on the designs there. But this is a more traditional type of kind of plate set that is more symmetrical. This is what Keith Kovac's been working on. Keith actually being our first hire at the studio.
Employee number 1.
I think he's at the dentist right now.
Yeah, he is.
But here, there are absolutely some elements of asymmetry that are present, on the boot, on the belt strap, on the guards. But traditionally, this kind of set represents a more Western plate influence that's present. So this is the modeling of that particular armor set. And you'll see that this is broken up into many different pieces that are actually attached to the character. This can be broken down pretty significantly on an individual piece basis, and that again lends itself to creating that highly customizable aspect that players will be able to influence on their character design.
So cool. This is the coolest armor I've ever worked on.
Yeah.
I did a lot of armor skinning in the past few months, and every day I'm going, wow, this is so cool. Who does this? Who does cool, skin-tight, completely design armor?
Oh, yeah.
Not just a texture, right? Not just a normal map. I mean, they're actually building this geometry out on this stuff. And it's super cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Well, I think that's going to kind of wrap things up for the character team, unless you have anything last that you want to say or add.
No, I'd just like to thank everybody for their continued support. We're all here working really hard to make an awesome game.
Yes.
And thanks for letting me out of my
Well,
my
you still have
cubicle.
you still have your
for-
chain on.
That's right. You know what? I'm actually really excited to go get back to the combat that I was
Nice.
working on.
Thank you so much.
So, all right, thanks
Brad.
guys. Bye.
Bye, Brad.
See everybody.
Jeff,
Wow, that was a lot of cool stuff. Part 3 will be coming out tomorrow, and it will be all the questions and answers from the Twitchcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching.